few minutes. We're going to ping the server to join in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm still waiting for Rebecca, one more speaker. Thanks, Deniz, and also Delleon for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
I just realized my mic was not working, so people might not have been able to hear me, but we'll just wait a few minutes and get started. We're going to ping the server in the event invite. All right, let's see. We are still waiting for one more speaker, but I feel like we can just give a short intro to the panel, and then we will introduce her when she gets here. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for our very first Web3 and DAO 101 panel. I'm really appreciative of everyone being here, and we have a really amazing group of speakers here today to share all about Web3 and DAOs. And so some context here is that we shared a little bit in our roadmap sneak peek last week that Top2G is working on DAO Discovery, which is going to launch next week. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started with intro. So for all speakers, we'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself, share your favorite current game or childhood game as a fun fact. And I just realized I didn't even introduce myself. I think most of you already know me, but I'm Kristin. I'm the CEO of Top2G, and I'm also a member of a couple DAOs, most notably Crypto Culture and Society, Protein, and also FWB. But I'll pass it over to you, Deniz, to kick it off with the intros for us.
Oh, hi, it's so nice to be here, and thank you, Kristin, for the generous invite. So I'm Deniz. I'm a community designer currently working for Protein and Voice. To keep it short, I have a background in communication and digital culture studies and used to work for a strategic design studio and had a chance to step into the community design world by co-designing and operating a cohort-based learning community until, of course, very recently, a classic story, I fell down the Web3 rabbit hole and literally quit my job and went full-time Web3. So right now I'm like design community strategies, manage communities, and streamline community operations, and mostly focus on DAOs and NFTs. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Deniz. Delleon, do you want to go next?
Sure. Once again, thanks for having me, and great to see all these people jumping into the Discord to hear about our DAO experience. So I go by DAOing with Delleon. I pretty much came up with that last year because I found myself being involved in so many DAOs.
I love
Short
it.
story on myself. I spent 8 years in the Georgia National Guard before getting out and switching over into DAOs. I started out as an apprentice in Raid Guild before being champion as a member. I'm also a member of Web3 Designerz, where I host our monthly fireside chats with OG designers. Active member in PotionDAO, where we stand up entertainment companies, most notably Fox Network and the Masked Singer TV show. And I'm also starting to get involved in a few other DAOs. In my day-to-day job, I'm a generalist at Tally, where we build tools for DAOs, mainly our governance protocol that lets DAOs list their proposals and then delegate and encourage their members to vote.
Great, thank you so much, Delleon. And so happy you can make it here today. And then next we have Rebecca, one of my close friends who I met in the Web3 space. So I'll pass it over to you, Rebecca, to introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me, Kristin. So my name is Rebecca Lamis. I've been in this space now since 2018. I actually started back in the world with Tezos. And since then, I have gotten quite, I would say, busy with various DAOs. I've kind of become a consultant-esque in a way with various DAOs in both the Ethereum space, Tezos space, Algo space, etc. Currently, I'm working on StakerDAO, Pussy Riot, who's launching their first organization in the space called Pussyverse, and then also QuantumNFT and CommonLands. So I'll definitely kind of dive into all of those with you guys a little bit more today.
Great, thank you so much, Rebecca. And just to remind everyone, I believe there's a thread in general in case you want to ask any questions. We're going to start with a couple moderated questions, then we'll definitely take or pepper in some questions from the audience. So for our very first question, before we begin, I'd love for, I know you shared a little bit in your intros, but I'd love for everyone to share, you know, what Web3 and DAOs are, or maybe if you could do it, explain it like I'm 5 definition, and also what they mean to you. Delleon, could you kick us off with that question?
Sure. So to me, a DAO is a digital community of like-minded people coming together to achieve goals and initiatives and looking for the best way to foster the growth of that digital community, and then to be able to help and provide resources for new people in those communities, as well as potentially partner with other DAOs. So that's my vision on how I see DAOs.
Great, thanks, Delleon. Deniz, how about you?
Well, Delleon put it very nicely, but I have a more simple one. I feel like those are like a community which comes together, and they like there's a token involved. So, and you have a share in the decisions that are being made. So it's more democratic. So like that's the operating system, and you do whatever you do with that operating system. So for me, it's that flexibility and having a token as a mediator of governance and decision making, and yeah, that flexibility that we didn't really had in traditional organizations. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Deniz. And Rebecca, anything to add?
Yeah, you know, I like to kind of compare it to the US structure called a housing, like cooperatives. It's really interesting how at the end of the day, most DAOs, the core kind of model and concept is that the community that is involved in the DAO gets to decide what the DAO does. And when you kind of look at different business structures today in corporate America, the closest thing that you can really see doing that is a cooperative, which is kind of the concept and model that all of the employees decide what the company does, and as such, they end up sharing in any revenue that is generated in their cooperative. You know, one of the most notable ones, for example, is a company called REI. And then it goes all the way down to smaller community cooperatives, housing cooperatives, things of that nature. And so what I love about DAOs is they've taken a very kind of similar concept to cooperatives, but they're applying it with this new innovative technology that allows you to connect anywhere in the world. So now it's this kind of new structural model that is similar to a cooperative, but allows anyone anywhere to be able to join this organization of like-minded people because they're not limited on where they are currently living or are in the world.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. No, those definitions are all great. And I think just for me, one of the easiest ones that I try to remember too, it's just if people ask them like, okay, community with a shared bank account, but there's so many nuances, so many different types of DAOs as well. So next up, we have a couple different questions for each panelist. So we'll kind of go through that list. First up for you, Deniz. So in the top GD community, we have a lot of folks here who are familiar with communities in the sense of Discord servers, you know, around a shared interest. What would you say is the biggest difference between a Discord server that's, you know, just a community versus one that's a DAO?
Yeah, I mean, in its most simplest terms, I think the biggest difference is between a Discord server and a DAO is the existence of a token, again, that underlining that, and a shared bank account, I would say. I mean, all DAO members hold tokens, which enables access to the server, first of all, and have a say in the governance. So also, I mean, your contributions are tokenized, for example. So in a Discord server, maybe your contribution might take you from one level to another, or with some certain badges, or maybe you enter into these special channels. But in a DAO, actually, you get paid in tokens if you contribute. So the token is a symbol of value and decision exchange. And yeah, I think that's the main difference.
Awesome. Thank you, Deniz. And so for some of our next questions, we're going to dive into a little bit about, each of your personal journeys discovering Web3 and DAOs. Rebecca, what inspired you to create CommonLands, and could you share a little bit more about your mission? And also, I think we have a lot of people who are really curious about, on-chain real estate and exactly what that means and the potential for it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to kind of jump in there. So, among all the organizations I'm working for, CommonLands is the one that I am the founder of and have been building over the last year or two. And essentially, the goal of CommonLands is to create a new opportunity for homeownership through community-owned, affordable, cooperative housing that is powered on-chain. And, that's a lot of kind of words, but essentially at its core, it's kind of reimagining what the corporate housing market looks like and providing all of the technologies and tools that Web3, crypto, and real estate offer in this space to really provide new homeownership opportunities to help communities build generational wealth. So, we're thinking about things that bypass credit scores, bypass down payments, bypass co-signers, things of that nature, really reimagining what we see today. And so how I actually kind of got into this was back, as I mentioned, in 2017, 2018, when I was starting in this space. I also simultaneously have always done a lot of, I would say, grassroots organizing work and working a lot in communities, working in the mutual aid space, et cetera, and just supporting community members and comrades however I can. And, when I was first in this space, I found myself really frustrated that, I was learning about all this new, really wonderful, incredible, potentially life-changing technology that is really restructuring what corporate America and this global society looks like, but it was so gatekept, so difficult to get into this space just because, there were a lot of barriers to access and education and entry. And so, while I was starting to work in this space and going from part-time to full-time, working at various different DAOs, I simultaneously did a lot of research in this space surrounding, how do we help onboard lower income communities that maybe don't currently have access to these tools globally. Then also personally, I have always done a lot of work associated to supporting unhoused community members in low-income communities and to being able to find permanent, accessible, affordable housing. And so when I was doing a lot of this research, I started thinking about how can we apply these new economic tools and models into affordable housing. And so now that's brought me to CommonLands and where it is today. And we're creating what I like to call a decentralized autonomous housing cooperative to help meet the massive demand for affordable housing by integrating blockchain technology into home ownership and really putting property ownership into the hands of the tenants rather than landlords. Happy to dive more into that. It's a very special niche, I think, in this space. But kind of as Kristin mentioned, real estate on chain is something that a lot of us have been thinking about for years now. And, if you just Google real estate blockchain, you'll find dozens of really incredible economic papers and scholarly work surrounded how this technology could really create a 180 in this space for real estate and just what property ownership is and shouldn't be. But we haven't really seen a lot of use cases practically do it out because it's scary. It's taking on a whole new world of physical assets and land ownership. But we have started to see it happen really in the last, I would say, year or so. So City DAO is a great example. They are the first organization as a Wyoming DAO LLC to purchase land in the United States. And there are a lot of other kind of smaller, I would say, organizations in the last year starting to tackle what real estate on chain looks like. Happy, if anyone on this call in particular is really interested in the real estate aspect on chain, feel free to shoot me a message, DM me, Twitter, what have you, because I'm always happy to jump into it a little more.
Great. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Delleon, so question for you is, you're in so many different DAOs, Web3 Designerz, PotionDAO, Green Guts DAO, and also Global Coin Research, just to name a few. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes each of them special and, highlight kind of maybe some of the differences or similarities between the communities?
Sure. So let me answer that as a two-folded question. So I asked a lot, like, how are you able to manage being in all these different DAOs? Well, one, I'm not a full-time contributor in each of them, and I do something different in each one, right? So it's like I don't have to be as time-strapped for my skill set because I do something different in each one. Like in Web3 Designerz, I'm strictly the host of the monthly fireside chat, and Web3 Designerz doesn't have a token. They make money through their partnerships and getting designers paid work. So to backtrack and to answer your question directly, Raid Guild is a service DAO. They build products, they build Web3 products. And what makes them special is that they are the go-to DAO to do that. There was a point where they didn't really have that many clients because people were still trying to figure out the Web3 space. And now they have more work available than people able to actually do the work. I have an excellent onboarding experience through the different apprenticeships initiatives that they do, where you're paid for working with a client, which is called a raid, and you do an internal project, which you're also paid for, which is called a RIP. Raid Guild does have a token, but you're paid in DAI or XDAI. Web3 Designerz, what they do that is very special, in my opinion, is they partner an OG Web3 designer with a newbie designer, whether you're new to Web3 or transitioning from Web2 to Web3, partner them up, get them on a paid project where the DAO gets a portion of the budget, that OG designer gets a portion of the budget as more of a supervisor. And the new designer gets the remaining part of the budget, and they also get the knowledge and experience of having an OG designer to kind of guide them in the process. So that's what makes Web3 Designerz special. In PotionDAO, we also don't have a token. We're more of a consultancy DAO, and we make money through our partnerships and the budgets that they have. So working with Fox, we help them speed up their audience by providing them with resources, knowledge, and information on NFTs, crypto, the Web3 space in general, and help them manage their Discord as moderators, and also, helping them to set up their NFT marketplace, which they're partnered with Alluvio. So those are the main 3 DAOs that I'm most active in. Green Guts debuted in December of last year, and what they are is an NFT finance DAO that is self-funded. So the token is on the roadmap, and I'm a sweat equity member. So what Green Guts does is they provide capital for people who are seeking loans for their NFTs, mainly through NFT FI, which is short for NFT finance. And in GCR is a research and investment DAO. And with them, I've only been doing the bounties as I get familiar with all the other moving parts of the DAO. And I tell people all the time, when you join a DAO, don't just jump head in. Kind of like tinker around and get your foot wet to make sure that this is what you want to do and where you want to be. Yeah, those are the DAOs that I'm a part of, and those are the things that make them special.
Thanks so much, Delleon. It was great. I learned a ton about all the DAOs you mentioned as well. And Deniz, could you share a little bit more about what Protein is and also just what it's like to be a community designer of DAOs? And then I guess follow-up question, kind of twofold. I'm curious about the biggest difference between community design in a DAO versus other communities you've observed.
Yeah, so Protein is a community of creators, thinkers, and doers who believe in good growth. I mean, we're building an ecosystem that develops and delivers breakthrough projects For season 1, we're new actually. We're now in season 2, so this is all very new. In season 1, we developed a good growth framework, which now kind of enables us to quantify and filter ideas if they're aligned with our inclusive, collaborative, and regenerative values. And for season 2, we clustered all projects under certain missions, and community voted which mission they want to take. I mean, or they want to pick for season 2. And so for season 2, we are now supporting 3 projects serving the mission on bringing underrepresented groups into the new economy. And so, yeah, about your second question. So being a community designer in a DAO is literally rocket science. I mean, of course, there are some transferable skills from managing Discord servers, Slack groups, and I don't know, maybe Telegram groups. But you really have to learn something new every day as a community designer in a DAO. And the problems are so complex, and you have to literally think in 3D when you're designing anything. So the biggest difference is, I think, the level of complexity and the level of like problem solving that you literally have to be facing every day. And yeah, and I also tweeted about it, I think like a couple of days ago, where DAOs have so many layers, because I mean, you design as a community designer / manager, you not just manage the members and the community, but also there are these sub communities in a DAO. There is the core team, for example. There are the core contributors. There are team leads. There are initiative leads, and it goes on. And that list can be so much longer, and they all need special care from the community manager, and they have their own, like, you have to design certain like special things for all of those sub communities. They all have their own cadences, or their own people living in different time zones, and people like contributing in different levels. So you have to take that in mind as well when you're designing things. And when you add tokenomics into the picture, it just gets even more crazier. So that's why, I think being a community designer in a DAO is literally thinking in 3D and like problem solving and learning new things every day. So it's quite dynamic and complex at the same time.
Wow, thank you, Deniz. No, that sounds amazing, and I love that. Just so many kind of roles such as community designers, etc. Like, I'm learning so much about them as DAOs continue to grow and more people build. Thank you. So question for you, Rebecca. Are there any learning resources you recommend for folks who want to dive a bit deeper into learning about blockchain, Web3, or DAOs?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really interesting because there isn't quite yet I would say, like, centralized space for DAO educational resources, but there are a lot of, I would say, individual leaders in this space who have been really good at providing information on DAOs and the organizational tools and resources associated. One of the individuals I would really recommend, his name is Aaron Wright, and he is someone who has been organizing DAOs since 2014, and he has created some of the biggest ones: Flamingo DAO, the Lao, Tribute Labs, which are all kind of creating really large international DAOs. And he has been kind of the leader in like DAO legislation as well within just policy, both in the US and internationally. So that's a great place to start. And then I would also say there are a lot of other individual smaller organizations that I have really loved following from a DAO tooling perspective as well. And something that I was going to recommend is I am putting together currently a really large resource document that maybe, Kristin, I could share with you after this to just share in this space of just where I would recommend getting all of the different educational tooling associated with DAOs and the different leaders in this space, because there's a large list of them. It's probably too many to say right on this
that
chat.
would be great. Thank you, Rebecca.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Question for you, Deniz. For someone really new and just learning about this, what beginner or newcomer friendly DAOs would you suggest joining?
Yeah, I love this question because, to be honest, I really I was a community member in Protein, and then I became like core team member and like a community manager. So I really didn't have any more time to discover other DAOs besides, I think, DAO Masters. I think that was my first DAO, because when you are a full-time contributor, I think one DAO is more than enough if you really I don't know, commit yourself, and that was like how I did it. So. I'm the only beginner and newcomer friendly DAO I can suggest, and I really believe in it, is Protein. Like Protein is one. I mean, we kind of we try to make everything much clearer, and we respect all the levels of Web3 competencies people bring in, and that's actually one of our questions in our application forms. I mean, like out of 10, how would you rate your knowledge of Web3? And we kind of are very sensitive to people that haven't even had a wallet yet, or well, they have to, since they have to submit an ETH wallet address. But yeah, so there's this level that you have to be there, of course. But then after you have a wallet, I mean, then all is on us. I mean, we have a lot of guides. We have a very supportive membership team, very supportive core team, and a lot of greatly prepared materials. So yeah, I think Protein is one of the beginner-friendly DAOs, I would say.
Great, thanks, Deniz. And I could definitely echo that. I think Protein was probably my first or second DAO that I joined just because I wanted to learn more, and I loved how inclusive it was. So thank you for designing it. So yeah, next question. Delleon, I know you shared a little bit about the different DAOs before, but I was wondering if you could share some more information on just what does it really mean to be a contributor, and how would you go about getting started if you're curious about contributing to DAO?
So being a contributor, there's several ways to actually get in, right? Like I've tried different ways. In one instance, you do the bounties that they have to get a feel for if you feel like you can do the work that DAO kind of wants and that you're aligned with that type of work. Another way is to join their Discord server and say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is how I like to contribute, and see who gets back to you. The good and the bad of that is the DAOs that have good onboarding experiences are good with communicating back, and the DAOs that don't have good onboarding experiences, sometimes those situations will lag. What really makes DAO contributing successful is being self-accountable and being consistent, right? So I worked on projects where a person will drop off and not say anything. And then they'll come back and say, hey, I had to take some time off because of X, Y, and Z, which is legitimate, but the communication wasn't there from the beginning, right? So now you kind of lost a sense of trust. So I say that what makes a good contributor would be someone who is accountable, consistent, when they are available, making sure that they're making themselves available. When they're not available, letting whatever project or team lead know that they're not available. I think I tweeted this a few weeks ago. The best DAO contributors are people who are freelancers, have volunteered before, have an entrepreneurial spirit, and are hustlers. And that's because they're not stuck on a foundation, that they're used to the ebbs and flows of volunteering or freelancing or the ups and downs of building something. Yeah, could you repeat the second part of the question again?
Oh yeah, of course. No, your answer is really great. Great so far. I think I think you answered it honestly. Just how would you recommend getting started as a contributor?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, those are the main ways I would say. Either do it through a bounty, find out what working groups the DAO has and how you can contribute, join and just let them know who you are, what you do, and how you like to contribute. Just poke around the Discord, see who's communicating the most, who their community manager or managers are, connecting with them. I always tell people this, especially for me. If you've never spoken to me online, do not DM me. Because people who are kind of like known in Discords or known in DAOs, you get inundated with people who actually need help, but you also get spam and scam. So for me to cut down on that and to keep down on that, if you had not spoken to me in the open form of some kind, DMing me will not help. So I would say just, put yourself out there and then start reaching out to people that way.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And I think this has come up in our community before, but like there are, scams not just around, Web3, NFTs. There's also just a lot of scams on Discord too. So just be really careful and safe as you embark on your, DAO or Web3 journeys. So next question is for Rebecca. So we have a really big community of builders here, both of, bots and also communities themselves. If someone wanted to start their own DAO, where should they start? And what would be the key steps for them to take?
Definitely. So I think kind of the first thing I would recommend is the way that I've seen really DAOs start to form is just start to build a community around whatever your like-minded passion and goals are for the DAO. So, the kind of something we've been bringing up is the need for core contributors. And, the DAO could be anywhere from tens to thousands of people, but at the end of the day, there has to be a community that is willing to help build this. And so one of the best ways to really get a DAO started is start to create your community, talk to other people you know of that might be interested in kind of the DAO you want to build, talk to other leaders in the space that have also specialized in something similar that you want to build in the DAO. And what you'll kind of find to happen pretty naturally is you're going to find other individuals in this space that not only want to help get this DAO started with you, but then potentially be a core contributor or help really showcase your community that you're trying to build or connect you with other people in this space. And, for better or for worse, this space is just a lot of like talking with other people and learning as much as you can and connecting with others who have a similar interest. And, one of the probably easiest ways to do this, step one, is to start a Twitter, either for yourself or for the organization, and just start conversations there and create your Discord in tandem to allow people who come across your social media platform or what have you to be able to keep the conversation going within a Discord. And I think it's just starting to have those conversations with your community to figure out how exactly you want to organize and build this DAO. And the second thing I would recommend that is if you are more familiar with DAOs or have people in your team, it's really always really beneficial if you can start to create a governance structure before you start to publicly talk about the DAO. The reason being is, once you have a governance structure and you know how you want your DAO to operate and what the logistics of the day-to-day look like for your community, when people start learning about you and working with you, they can kind of jump right in, and start as a contributor in your space. So those are kind of the two really key things. But, first things first, start the conversations and start building your community around this like-minded idea.
Can I piggyback on her answer, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so great points that she just made. To add to that, I'm a firm believer, just based off of recent experience, of people coming to Tally who want to launch their governance. They've never contributed to a DAO. So they're starting a DAO blindly. And I really think before you start a DAO, you should at least be a member of one that kind of understand the dynamics of what works and what doesn't work, what bots you need, what bots you don't. What's the best way to onboard? What's the best way to get people involved and informed? I think if you don't have like those foundational steps or at least understanding of it, you starting a DAO with other like-minded people who it's almost like the blind leading the blind. So you want some foundation by having knowledge of being in a DAO and what it looks like. The other point is I was at MCon last September and I was familiar with X Infinity, but I didn't know their story. And they started out as 20 gamers in a Telegram group. And they were all accountable with meeting weekly at the same time, the same day of the week. And that's how they started to create their DAO. They went from this Telegram group of early coordination success. If you don't have that, you are setting yourself up for failure. I don't care the size of your treasury. I don't care how many members you have. If you don't have established early coordination success, you are setting yourself up for failure. And how they set themselves up for success was the same 20 people went from a Telegram group to creating this play to earn system and creating this game and then expanding to a Discord and then expanding to different communities globally and bringing them into their Discord. But because they started out early with coordination success and they already had a foundation of like-mindedness, that is what was able to make them successful now. And now they got like 800,000 people in a bunch of Discords, and then now they have the good problem of trying to figure out how do we keep the community together while these different communities are somewhat siloed. But yeah, I would just like to add that, you know, your governance is extremely important, but you need to have early coordination success, and you need to have at least knowledge of what a DAO is and how it operates before just jumping in and starting your own.
Thanks, Delleon. I think that's actually a really great segue to the next follow-up question we had, which is for you, just given your work with Tally. So we're just curious, you know, what are the best tools to support the creation and management of a DAO?
Well, the best tool right now for governance is to launch your DAO's governance on Tally. We're 100% on chain, and we are multi-chain, so we support Ethereum and Polygon, and we're going to be adding some more chains later this year. But I would say the things that help formulate your structure, I would say SeshBot and CollablandBot are the two most used and best to help, whether it's setting up your calendar, setting up reminders, knowing what people are doing within the Discord. So yeah, those are the two big ones that I would say are not only the most used and most popular, but work very well regardless of whatever your DAO is. So it doesn't matter whether you're a DeFi DAO or an NFT DAO or a nonprofit DAO. Those are some of the tools that I would say should be widely used: SeshBot, CollablandBot, and of course, launching your governance on Tally.
Thanks. And that's you're just setting me up for all these great follow-up questions. So this next one is for you, Deniz. So we have a lot of Discord bot devs here, and we're just curious, you know, what are your favorite Discord bots, you know, as a community designer, and also just curious on your perspective of other bots that have been helpful in Protein or any of the other DAOs that you've been into.
Yeah, I'm a lover of Me6. I mean, my first love. I still keep using it. I just love it. I mean, it's easy, very easy to use, and it's my favorite, and it's customizable, and I use it from the desktop. I'm not a fan of like Discord commands. Sorry to say that, but yeah, and I like the simplicity of Me6. Besides that, I mean, Protein loves Hydra. I mean, Hydra is as if it's our seventh core community member. We like Hydra for, I mean, playing some tunes before and after our events, which we have a lot. And yeah, we have our own radio as well within the Discord. And we also love Pawa to record our meetings, because I mean, not everybody can make it to our town halls, and it's so easy to record things. And of course, we kind of use, and we are happy with Medusa to gate our Discord. So Medusa makes sure that you have Protein tokens in your wallet, and then it opens the rest of the Discord server to you. And yeah, right now we're working on a tipping bot, I think, but I don't know where we are at with that, and an onboarding bot. But yeah, right now, these are the ones that we're using, and also my favorite.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, we have a lot of fans of Hydra here as well, and actually the creator of Hydra was just on our bot developer panel a few weeks ago, so that's fantastic. And Rebecca, so one question for you is, I know you've been, you know, you started your journey with Tezos and you've been in the space a long time. How has the DAO and Web3 space changed since you started?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, DAOs in this space, I think what is so exciting is the more we are doing this work, the more we're learning, and the quicker we are figuring out how to successfully work as organizations. And there's more tooling that's popping up, and more people are becoming more educated in the space, and understanding the best ways to run DAOs. You know, in my personal opinion, in 2021, we really started to see DAOs become a more common tooling and governance governance model within the larger crypto and Web3 community. And I think also as a result, and I think it's great to what Delleon was saying earlier, is unfortunately a lot of people did start DAOs because they heard about it, they thought this was the new big next thing, but we're starting a lot of DAOs without necessarily having that background and educational understanding of, you know, what is a DAO, how it runs, how it works. They haven't necessarily had that experience being in DAOs. So I think in 2021, there was a lot of kind of trials and failures within the space, and a lot of DAOs really grew and grew much larger from that kind of learning experience. And what I'm excited about 2022 is I think now that there is so much more material and educational material and tooling opportunities, and that in 2022, we're seeing a lot more DAOs that are being launched with a much more in-depth kind of model, operational model, governance model, with leaders that really understand the space and understand how to make the DAO run well. And so, you know, I really think we're just in the beginning of a whole new decades to century of DAOs as one of the lead kind of organizational models globally. So I think, you know, what we've seen thus far is just such a small kind of piece of what DAOs are going to become. And it makes me really excited to see these newer and stronger and much more thought out DAOs now being launched in 2022. And I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing where they go and onboarding more people into the general crypto Web3 space through DAOs.
Great, thanks so much, Rebecca. So we have a little under 20 minutes left. We're gonna switch over to some questions from the server. Sorry, the mods are helping me order them so that we can get to all of them. I think for the first one, we have a lot of questions from Chillfish8. Appreciate all your questions. For the first one that we have is, why do DAOs love using Discord? Whoever wants to jump in, feel free.
We don't love you. I mean, I don't love using Discord. I mean, Discord was there, and someone asked me this question before. I mean, why not Slack and why Discord? Because Slack is not that customizable. I think one of the things with Discord is that there are like custom bots. It's more, you can shape the server. You can have different roles. Different roles can have different channels, and it's more shapeable, I would say, and more customizable. So I think that's why Discord was the go-to platform. But I definitely think we might, like, DAOs might not be here in some years because DAOs have other needs than they have more specialized needs, and like we do. So I feel like it's a good start, and it's a nice place. I mean, I always liked Discord, but I don't think it will stay, to be honest.
Thanks, Deniz. So next question we have is, do you think Web3 can ever really become a mainstream system for the general public? I know right now, just not just in, you know, our community, but also across, you know, Discord and, you know, society, there's been like a lot of kind of debate on this topic.
Yeah, I look at it the same way I look at the other asset classes, right? Crypto in and of itself kind of became mainstream in 2017, but it has been around since 2011, right? NFTs have been around since 2018, 2019-ish, but they didn't become really popular till last year. DeFi exploded last year. So I think just as the ecosystem grows, it will become more of the norm, the new norm, right? So when people really start to understand, okay, I can't, if me and you went to work for Amazon or Google tomorrow, there is no equity for us. But I can be a tokenized equity for doing what I love in this digital community. Once people really understand that, yes, I think DAOs will start to take off more, but they're not going away. I really think that once the nonprofit sector, the traditional nonprofit sector, figures out DAOs, it's really game over, because then they're not relying on the government for grant funding. They're not relying on outsourced fundraising, right? You have this treasury and you're already doing good work, and now you do with it. So yes, I don't think DAOs are going away. I think they'll continue to get bigger and bigger. And I really believe over the next 2 to 3 years, we will see the mainstream explosion of them.
And I just wanted to add to that is on the nonprofit point, I just couldn't agree more. And I am so excited that I think over this next year, we're going to see more and more use cases of DAOs as organizational structures for nonprofits, because it really is just creating a new kind of organizational model that allows the communities to self-fund, which is just so unbelievably exciting, and also simultaneously providing the kind of technology and tooling to allow the DAO to scale at a much quicker rate than maybe a traditional nonprofit would due to current, I would say, restrictions, barriers, legislation needs, etc. So I definitely think it's really just the beginning of DAOs, and I think we're going to see more and more larger and larger use cases start to pop up. And I just, couldn't agree more from the nonprofit government kind of standpoint that I think DAOs are going to be a really kind of game-changing organization to allow those communities to build and create at a quicker and more successful manner. Is a financially independent one as well.
Thanks, Rebecca. So the next question we have is from Molly, of course. How do you see DAOs being incorporated in Web2 companies, organizations, and the government?
Could you repeat that one again?
Oh, yes, of course. So from Molly, we have, how do you see DAOs being incorporated into Web2 companies, organizations, and the government?
So this is a catch-22 for DAOs, because DAOs are supposed to be decentralized, and Web3 is community ownership, and Web2, you're the product. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how Web2 companies are willing to relinquish some of that power and put it into the hands of the actual users in the community. One of the things about, when Facebook turned itself to Meta, the Web3 community has continued to stick their nose up at them, and rightfully so, because they're not decentralized. So is it really a metaverse? Like, how much control do I have over the content that I create? YouTube is now going to start to allow for videos to become NFTs. Well, how is it truly decentralized if you can take down the videos that you don't approve of or that go against your guidelines, right? So it'll really be interesting to see how this starts to take shape moving forward. Will these companies really merge from Web 2 with Web 3, or will they start to create different tiers or different wings of their products that are more Web 3 native? So the jury's kind of still out on that. I haven't seen a Web 2 company make that bridge done well just yet. So the best answer I can really give you is it's still a wait and see game.
And I would also add to that, it is really kind of hard to predict how that's going to pan out, because really we're just starting to see Web2 organizations enter this space due to that kind of NFT blow up that has occurred. It is a kind of interesting model that a lot of Web2 organizations are figuring out how to capitalize off of. And it definitely, a lot of what these organizations are choosing to do aren't necessarily in the same kind of spirit of decentralization. And so I think with DAOs, my guess is what might happen first is that NFTs are going to, and we're already seeing it, NFTs are becoming the token access to DAOs for a community. So owning that NFT gives you the access to that DAO and organization. So I could definitely see a lot of Web2 organizations potentially launching NFT collections that open up an opportunity to join a DAO that is a subsector of the org. I am very skeptical of any Web2 organizations, I would say international Web2 companies, fully taking on the DAO model, just because at the end of the day, kind of as Delleon said, that would require that corporate entity relinquishing almost all of their power to the community, which also relinquishes what they are going to do with the treasury. So it is I think it's a very good question, and kind of as Delleon said, it's out to the jury still, but I do anticipate that NFTs are going to be kind of the gateway for subsector of DAOs, and I think personally the smartest of Web2 companies are going to start to figure out how to implement DAOs on a much larger level into their organization. And in my dream world, we get to a place where DAOs are so big that they can just buy out Web2 companies and themselves, and then basically purchase all of the organization and the rights to it. An example of that was the Blockbuster DAO. I don't know if you guys saw that. They haven't acted on it yet, but their whole goal as a DAO is to basically raise enough funds via an NFT sale and token sale to then purchase all the rights of the Blockbuster entity and then run it as a DAO. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. But I think this is such a great question, and I can't wait to see where it goes.
Yeah, and how I agree with both what you said, and I also would like to add that we are running experiments in DAOs. Like I don't know how about like the other DAOs, but in Protein we're experimenting with, like we kind of come up with new organizational structures, new ways of decision making, new ways of compensation. So like new ways of community management. Seeing your employees as as like community and stuff like that. So I think a very smart leader would come and study those and what they're experimenting, and then take the right insights back to their companies. And I think this will exactly happen. Like this will how things will change. And if they're smart, if they can really take away the right insights from what like this crazy experimentation period we're going through, then they will, like bold leaders hopefully will have the right mindset to go back to their old companies and say, hey, we can do this like this as well. But I really don't think that all companies will become DAOs. I think, for example, consultancy, and there are these very like old embedded, I know like what kind of working style companies or like organizations that will have to maintain the way they are. But I think they will start experimenting with these small things, and that will where real change will happen in these more like non-Web3 organizations, in my opinion.
Thank you. No, really, really incredible answers. And thank you again for the great question, Molly. So we have a question from Chillfish. It's a little long, but I'm going to try to read it. Let me know if you need me to repeat it. But so Chillfish is asking or saying, the web as we know it right now has two sides, sort of this light side and dark side. If Web3 takes off and becomes mainstream, this will also have the same behavior. How is that going to work in terms of protecting its users from illegal activities? Can you moderate this area, or could it become a no man's land exploited to distribute this content? How does this make Web3 solutions any different to Web2 in this sense?
I lost connection for a hot second.
Oh, no, that's okay. Let me try to make, so this is my take on your question, Chillfish. So I think the main thing here is just kind of curiosity around, Web2 versus Web3. What protections are there for users from illegal activities or moderation or, exploitations? Just trying to understand like what differences there could be between Web3 versus Web2 for, I think, these big problems that persist in both.
I think, well, to the question, they both are big problems. I don't really know how much is being solved. The best answer that I can give is that at least I know that in Web3 as a community, we've done more to educate and provide resources on safety and security, right? Whether it's just basics on MetaMask and Ledger, how to not get scammed or spammed in your Discord, providing that type of information, or people creating content around that type of information. I can't really say that I've seen that too much in Web 2, but also because Web 3 is more about self-ownership and self-custody of your assets, that we're more inclined to make safety and security more of a priority. I just haven't seen it at a level to where it's like, when you do this, watch out for that. When you do that, watch out for this across the board. It's more or less either the communities themselves have taken it on to make sure that members are aware of these safety measures and security measures, or really just in crypto Twitter. I would say I've seen it more prominent where somebody will tweet out safety information, and people will either say, hey, this is the thread that you need to follow and read so that you're informed, or they're going to say, hey, this completely doesn't make any sense. I don't know who this person is, but that's not how we do it here. An example of that is I was on a Twitter Spaces once, and the person was telling people how to get into crypto, and they literally told them to take out a loan on their credit card to buy Ethereum and Bitcoin. And then somebody literally started a thread and was like, if you follow this, you're going down the wrong rabbit hole. This is what you really do. They weren't willing to go back and forth with the person in the Twitter Spaces, but they were still willing to let the community know in their own Twitter thread that this is the right way to go about it. So I just see more access to information on safety and security in Web3 than I do in Web2.
Thanks, Delleon. No, I thought that was a really great answer around like safety, security, and scamming. I realized the Chillfish provide a little bit more context, so let me ask the question. I guess they're really curious about more, I guess, dark web related activities. So, maybe more trust and safety, like drug sales, etc. I guess, NSFW content, etc. And I think to follow up on that, I guess asking a little bit about, the concept of, so for example, in Web2 companies, right, YouTube can take down content that they don't approve of. How would, I guess, moderation work in a more kind of community setting?
I guess the moderation is really up to the DAO and their values, right? Like, so if you join a DAO that's like, hey, we are unapologetically freedom of speech, right? Like, you're going down a very wide rabbit hole, and as opposed to some other DAOs that may be like, hey, we are here for everybody and you're entitled to your opinion, but we're not here for this type of dialogue or content, right? Like no racism or no homophobic stuff, things like that. So you as the individual have to decide what type of community that you want to be a part of, because all of them are not going to put in mechanisms that make everybody feel comfortable, welcomed, and warranted.
I also would add to that, kind of beyond DAOs and more in the larger Web3 kind of conversation around the dark web. I definitely hear where this question is coming from, and I think that is a very common question we hear, at least in America, about this from a news perspective. My personal belief, though, is like this kind of concept of the dark web has honestly been a really big kind of propaganda piece of media that we have seen happen internationally from corporate America as a way to kind of scare us in what is actually happening in this space. And so I think there are definitely illegal activities that occur in the dark web and Web3, but I also would really kind of recommend you kind of reframe that thought process in the sense of thinking about in like today's America, for example. I live in the US, so I can't necessarily speak for other countries. There is a lot of illegal activity that happens among corporate America and among the US government, who are the ones that are technically regulating everything, if that makes sense. And so, we are naturally seeing illegal activities take off in the Web3 space, as you would in any country or entity or kind of Web2 community as a whole as well. And I think we are starting to see more and more regulated models pop up from the larger entities that are really taking off, like OpenSea, for example. It's not a DAO, but something that they've really focused on in the last 3 months is how to regulate and stop scams associated to the largest NFT marketplace. And so I think that's just something that we're going to see happen more and more. You know, we're at such the beginning era of Web3 that naturally there are a lot of activities that we haven't figured out how to regulate yet, but I think it's going to happen much more naturally with time. And I also think at the end of the day, you know, the illegal activities that are happening in Web3 outweigh, or the pros of Web3 outweigh the smaller dark web portion of this kind of space, just as you kind of see it in traditional America and internationally.
Thanks, Rec and Delleon. I know we're almost at time. I'm going to ask one last question, but if you do have a hard stop, no worries. Just thank you again for coming in. You can drop off. We have a question from Mac, who's curious about some of the coolest, most creative applications of DAO concepts you've come across during your time in this space.
What does he mean by concepts?
I guess it could just be DAOs or ideas for a DAO or DAOs themselves. Yeah.
A couple of my favorites. One was, of course, the one that we all knew, the Constitution DAO. It was this group of people that wanted to buy and preserve the Constitution. There wasn't, I think, as we talked in this kind of conversation, there wasn't a lot of kind of original thought in how that would actually tangibly work and how you would see that out. And they unfortunately didn't end up being able to buy the Constitution, but being able to see tens of thousands of people kind of band together around this kind of concept and idea was really a nice proof of concept of what DAOs can do and how quickly they can organize people, just with the similar kind of long-term goals and mindset in mind. Another favorite one of mine that I worked on last year was City DAO, and it was an organization as a DAO that did purchase their first plot of land of any DAO ever. So that was a really interesting kind of use case that we saw take off. And I really love a lot of the DAOs that are popping up with a more kind of environmental science, kind of climate change perspective, and figuring out how you can use organizational tools within DAOs to directly raise funds and create larger movements associated to really fixing the environment and what we are seeing happen with climate change. So those are a couple different ones, but those have all been favorites for me recently.
I think my favorite is CommonLands. I mean, also they have this amazing pieces that they also publish as well, and I like CommonLands because as a remote worker, I mean, so what they do is actually they buy or like rent cabins in the middle of nowhere, and you as a DAO member you can go there and like rent that cabin and walk and like maybe like bring your DAO friends and work from there, and they have this like flexible cabins all around, I think, certain places of America. And I found that such a novel idea because I mean, as a like we now work from everywhere, so like being able to be a part of a DAO and also something that translates into your real life is, I think, what really makes me love CommonLands. Please check it out. I mean, their publications are also amazing if you want to know more of DAOs.
Yes, love CommonLands. Highly recommend.
Great. All right. I think we're at time. Thank you again for all the speakers for coming and also everyone for asking questions. And we'll have more events in the future. I think one of our next events will be a panel for Discord server owners and community best practices. So thanks again, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful Friday and great rest of the weekend.
Thank you, Kristin.
Thanks, Deniz.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.